and thanks everybody for coming to this early morning presentation. I think most of us got used to doing these presentations in the comfort of our own homes, maybe in underwear. But today everybody wore clothes, that's good. We're talking about design. What do you wear when you talk about design? I was thinking, should I wear my turtleneck? But I did not. There's so many different types of design that we can talk about, and Lodo already said, where do you start? When he asked me to come speak about design, I thought, well, that's maybe a bit of a strange topic. Everybody here, or many people here, are designers, graphic and digital product branding, and I come from industrial design. And then I figured design is actually a nice topic to talk about because it's the whole idea of Creative Mornings, to talk about design. It's something everybody in design does a lot, during work, but also outside of work. I think everybody likes to talk about design. Maybe that's something we should talk about. So I want to circle today's theme about talking about design. That sounds very meta, which it is a little bit, but we'll also just take my journey of the last 4 or 5 years in design as a guideline. What does talking about design mean to me, and what should it mean to us as designers? So the little agenda, what do we talk about when talking about design? What is design? I'll try to tackle that briefly. Why do we like talking about design so much? Because we're in Rotterdam. And in Rotterdam, people say, niet lullen maar poetsen. Right? We shouldn't talk, we should get things done. And should we actually be talking about design then? Or should we just go make things? This is going to be my story. I went to study industrial design, which is this type of design where we end up, after the whole process, making 3D drawings and sending it to a factory, and then they make things. Or that's what I thought this design was when I went to study it. But I think along the way I already found out that design, and also industrial design, is so much more than just that. In the end, maybe a product comes out of the process, but as many of you here will know, it's not necessarily about the product. It's maybe more about the experience that the product can evoke for people, about the transformation that it can bring to you as a person, as designer, maybe the transformation to society, and I think this is what drives people to talk about design, what keeps a lot of designers in this field. And if you would have asked me about that time, what do we talk about when we talk about design, I would have said it's probably transformation. Through transformation, make things happen for ourselves, realize changes around us in our environment, realize changes in ourselves to the people we interact with. And when I say realize changes for ourselves, I think that became really real for me in my graduation project, where I read about this technology where if you put a little current with sponges on the top of your head, that you can influence your neural activity and maybe design yourself. It's like, wow, maybe that's really kind of the epitome of design. If design is transformation, and you can design yourself and be smarter, be more empathic, or maybe dumber. I don't know. That's maybe what design really is about. So I did this thing that nobody should ever do at home, but I bought the sponges and the battery, and I tried to design myself. And then the whole project culminated in this headgear design where if you would connect this with open source hardware, maybe people at their couch at home could do this. And I thought, that's cool. I designed transformation, but in the end I also just designed talk, just a picture on the screen. You graduate, but I don't actually know how to make this. How do you go from a nice image and a nice idea to actually making a product? And like I said, I'm from Rotterdam, so I wasn't satisfied at this point. And even though I liked this talking about design in this kind of capital D design type of way, it was just all talk. So then I moved to China. And I thought there's only one place in the world where people really know how to do that last step and take a product and put it into the world. So in 2017 I moved to Shanghai, and this is me literally moving into my house. I know for the last 4 or 5 years I was working in Shanghai. I came back a month or two ago. So now it's time for a lot of reflection and what did I actually do all this time there. Well, design in Shanghai, you know, when I moved, I thought, yes, there is a lot of production happening, but it's also a place of innovation and really big transformation. And as designer, I knew there should be so many opportunities to make things happen really at a scale that has impact that maybe in the Netherlands it's hard to encounter. But I ended up actually feeling like this guy, pushing out designs in maybe 2-week sprints where we would get an assignment from factories mostly or people with like big catalogs and designing really some of the most mundane products. You know, I even designed these kind of presenters and the company is like, we need more of these presenters. And okay, well, let's see, how does it fit in your hand? Maybe make it a little smaller, maybe we change how the buttons are laid out and we send it. And a lot of these things need a designer, and design in China can be this big dream of the transformation. But for the first few years, I think, for me, I felt like this guy. And actually there's also a movie I took, because it did allow me to visit these factories and to see how products get made. And here we were working on a thermos bottle, a drinkware, and yeah, then you visit the factory, and yes, I learned how I could maybe have realized this headgear design and really made it if I would have stayed motivated enough to do that. Then after maybe 2-3 years of pushing out designs like a factory worker, I started to work for myself, and the last 1.5 years I've been freelancing under my alias Polle, and trying to deviate a little bit from just doing the design of products, but also seeing how we can help these clients with kind of the strategy behind it, the ideas behind it, and making sure that it's not just a little presenter that we put on the market, but that it's something more. Yeah, like I said, it's a time for a lot of reflection. And when I was making this presentation, I thought, yeah, I made this graduation project that was just hypothesis, and then I wanted to learn how to really make things. And it's almost as if I would have asked myself the question, how might we stop talking about design? Because then I moved to a country where I couldn't understand any of my clients, so I couldn't actually really talk to them. I just had to show an image, and then that was it. Couldn't really do these presentations as I'm doing now today. And then there was so much speed and pressure involved that there really was no time to talk during the process. And of course there's small interactions, but you can't calmly sit down if somebody expects 3D drawing ready for manufacturing 2 weeks after you start a project. And then we had a small team, and then I left them all behind and I started working for myself. And now I realize, like, wow, I really tried to stop talking about design. It didn't work, because I think as designer in the end, you end up talking to yourself, but also in various ways with your clients and your audience. And maybe that is then what design is. Maybe design is communication, and the role of the designer is the role of the communicator. So we say, why do we like to talk about design? Well, maybe that's kind of our job. We chose this profession, and the profession is talking or communicating. And if you think back about the Rotterdam slogan, like niet lullen maar poetsen, like not talking but doing, this kind of implies that the talking is not what you should be doing, right? And that there's something else you should be doing at the same time. But I think at some point along this way, I came to realize that talking is actually maybe part of the doing for us, and it's okay to talk. And even though I made it myself very difficult, I managed to communicate a lot. Now, design is communication, happens on many levels. Products like these, we don't have to talk about so much as designers, because maybe they speak for themselves. If we show something like this to a client, then they can see, oh, maybe it's for a young audience, it's positive, it seems easy, all the shapes are easy. Don't really have to tell much about a design like this. But so this design already communicates, and maybe as designer we design that communication into the product. But of course, as the assignments get more complex, we need to increase our level of communication. So at some point when I was working independently, I was working with this startup who wanted to launch a smart wine fridge, they said. I was like, okay, that sounds cool. A bit of technology, a bit of lifestyle, and wine in China. How do we bridge that culture? That's actually a very nice thing to dive into as designer, but you need to talk a lot. They're a startup, they don't have anything. We need to have this robotic arm inside that can grab the wine bottle, and it can, whoa, and it needs to be done in 3 weeks. And that's really what they said. And it was just me. So then I asked my friend, hey, maybe we can do this together. So I teamed up with my friend, and we set up first workshops. What's your brand idea, and how do you want to reach your clients? And we didn't speak the same language so much. I mean, my Chinese has gotten to a level where I can survive in a restaurant, but not in a business context. And their English was good enough for kind of normal conversation, but not for kind of these deep emotional talks. Like, what do you dream of? Try to ask that to somebody who doesn't speak that language perfectly. So this was quite tough, but we use a lot of visual stimuli and try to do everything bilingual, prepare everything really well, and then it works out. So this is the design we finally ended up presenting at the Beijing Design Week last month on the right, and it was kind of evolved from this robotic arm situation, which would not really have been in our capabilities at the start, to just having a modular framework where users and the business can keep building on, and maybe in the future introduce different technologies with. And then if I think about these projects, it's like, communication, that's maybe more of the work that I've been doing than actually the creative part or the execution part of projects like these. But then if I would have asked this client, hey, do you agree that design is actually communication? Like, no. For them, design is business. All right. They hope that what I do is going to help them make more money or stand out from their competitors, make sure that in 3-4 years they have a healthy business and they can keep growing. It's a sense of survival maybe in it, right? That the business is ready for the future. Design is business. That's also what a lot of people figured out over the last decade or so. Right? We see all these big consultancies like the McKinseys and the E&Ys. They grab design now as part of their offering. Hey, we do design, and then they do the numbers. Right? Design-based companies or companies with design in the boardroom do 30% better on shareholder revenue. So yes, design is business. It's actually true, and that applies then on that shareholder level, but also on the kind of really bottom level. In China, we were working on another product, and should have been made out of a certain grade of plastic. And when we got the enclosures from the factory, they were so brittle, and it really is not what we could put on the market. So fly down to the factory, and it seemed that our supplier, our material supplier, had given us a cheaper grade of plastic than what we had bought, because then they can save a bit of money. And yes, design is business in that sense as well. So as designer, you really need to communicate then on so many levels, also with these sub-suppliers, to make sure that what we're doing is what we should be doing. So here we were flushing out the machines to replace all the material that we did not need. But if we talk about business of design, it's usually not about these few cents of plastic. Here we're trying to think with companies, like I said, how can we ensure you still exist in the future, that you really connect with your audience, and that everybody in the boardroom agrees with where we're going. And if we talk about what design really can be at the most complex level, like I shared that cookware slide where, like, yes, you can show an image of a design easily, and people understand what it means. But if it becomes more complex, communication and talking really is one of the main things you're doing. And about this complexity, and I've shown a few slides kind of hinting to how I was living in Shanghai, that these factory slides make it seem like it's not so modern at all. But if you live in Shanghai as designer, you actually do see and feel the transformation that is happening, the speed and the scale of it. And you realize that we have such a big role to play in making sure that that transformation is going in the right direction. You see, it's not linear, right? It's really an exponential transformation, and in the Netherlands, we still have to catch up with technological innovations and a lot of other things that are coming our way. And as designers, we'll be the ones that have to do this catching up and make sure that the rest of the people can kind of smoothly roll into this. And I think that design talking, or talking about design, is one of the ways that we do that. We can make these designs quite easily in the end if they are easy to make. But like I said, as these systems grow, we need to talk a lot about design. And it took me a move halfway across the globe and 4 or 5 years of trying to stop talking about design to realize, like, this is actually maybe part of the job, and actually part of the job that I really like, to dig into these futures that are coming our way, and to come through them, come out the complexity, and try to present them then to the world in a way that they are digestible. So wrapping up then, I've said a few things about what design is or can be, but I think if you would ask me today, I would say maybe design is enjoying survival. And there's a sense of enjoyment to it, where if you make a simple product like this, you can, maybe there's not so much survival, but you can enjoy it. Have a funny idea, maybe you make it a different shape or a different color, or maybe there's better things you could do with it. And sometimes there's a more sense of survival, like how does our business outsmart the rest? How does our species continue to exist? And it's beautiful when they go hand in hand, where as designers we have a fun time helping things progress. So that's what I'm going to be doing. And when Lodo asked me to come talk about design, it's like, wow, that's maybe the last time anybody ever asks me, because I'm saying goodbye to my designer title, and I'm starting as innovation consultant next Monday. And maybe it's just another way of saying a design talker, but I'm looking forward to using design talking for everybody, and I would encourage people in Rotterdam to embrace talking as part of what we do in design. Now let's talk. Thanks.